This is the story of Billie Joe Armstrong, the frontman of Green Day, but so much more. In addition to focusing on Billie Joe instead of Green Day, we will take a closer look at Billie Joe's pre-Green Day bands, as that information is not very well known to even some of the biggest Green Day fans in the world. Billie Joe Armstrong was born on February 17th, 1972, in Piedmont, California, a small town near the largest city of East Bay, Oakland, California, in the United States. Billie's parents were older than most people having babies, with Andrew Armstrong being 44 years old and Ollie Armstrong, his mom, being 40 when Billie was born, and already had 5 children. 3 boys, 3 girls, and good things always come in 3. Being surrounded with family from the start, young Billie Joe no doubt started life as an outgoing personality, unafraid to speak his mind, sharpening his social skills through his siblings, Alan, David, Anna, Holly, and Marcy, even though Alan was 22 years older than sweet Billie Joe and already out on his own. Out there on his own, the Armstrongs were plentiful, Billie Joe having 21 aunts and uncles to choose a favorite, and 24 cousins. One of Billie Joe's uncles would die in a war. The family started before Andrew and Holly, however, with Pedro Marciano and Teresa Nigro, who were Billie Joe's great-great-grandparents, who came to Boston from southern Italy, and then from Boston moved to Berkeley, California, to have jazz musicians over to the house, which had a mesmerizing effect on the young Billie Joe. But these jazz jam sessions weren't the only music coming into the household. Billie would listen to country music with his mother Ollie and her inspiring piano playing throughout his life. Billie's entire family had their own symbolic crates of records, and it was Billie Joe's siblings who had the stuff of legends, the music of the young people. The family were now positioned in Rodeo, California, the place of queens, if you ask me, or Jesse Malin. Billie was born into a musical world, and in 1977, at the age of 5, Jilly Bo Legweek, with his curly blonde hair, started getting gigs as a musician. Girls loved his charisma, already a force to be reckoned with, as Star Wars was at the box office for the first time. Aside from living room jam sessions, $2 Bill Y'all got his first public performances in hospitals of all places, singing songs and healing people with the power of music, perhaps a preview of what would come in 2005 when American Idiot, the album, woke up coma patient Corey George. But back in the late 70s, when punk was taking over the music scene, Billie was sharing a bunk bed with his brother David. With hospital patients improving by the sound of his voice, Billie was taken to Fiat Records, where James and Marie Ferratone had written a little ditty called Look for Love. While the song had no meaning according to Green Day fandom Wikipedia, I'm sure that is incorrect. This was Billie Joe's first dealings with a label, so Gilman Street punks who say Billie sold out for Dookie are complete American idiots. Billie Joe sold out at the age of 5 when he went to work for Fiat Records. The person who inspired this sellout move? Billie Joe's teacher from Hillcrest Elementary School. Jilly Bo's Elementary School for Losers tour would continue into the retirement homes of his community, his show tunes, covers, not just healing the sick, but de-aging the elderly. On the drums would be his father, Andy Armstrong. Music was the air that he breathed, and the young Billie Joe would take up piano lessons and guitar lessons before his 9th birthday. 1982. Before getting into tears falling like rain from the stars, let's look at some of the music coming out around the time that, and this will be very important for young Billie Joe or Jilly Bo. The Replacements' first album came out just months before the 1982 New Year. The Cure, The Clash, Susie and the Banshees, REM were touring the college circuit and about to break into the mainstream. And then the tragedy struck. Andy Armstrong was diagnosed with esophageal cancer and fought it until September 10th, 1982. Billie Joe was 10 years old. His adult siblings all stepped up to help Ollie raise the young Jilly Bo as she worked at Rod's Hickory Pit as a waitress to support the kids that were still at home. This traumatic event had become a huge part of Green Day lore, and as 21 years later, Billie would open up this heart-wrenching topic for the song Wake Me Up When September Ends. And I want to point out that while the subject matter is serious, Billie Joe himself has had fun with the song or the title at different times, so don't beat yourself up too bad about posting that Wake Billie Joe Up meme on Facebook or Instagram. Don't make bad taste jokes about the situation, but also we all need to acknowledge that even Billie Joe can joke about the memeability of Wake Me Up When September Ends, the song. This has been a public service announcement. This is only a test. The aftermath. It's 1982. Somewhere then instead of now, there's a woman banging her head to the sound of cable TV, and she'll never see the world the same. Before his passing, Andy had given Billie a cherry red Hohner acoustic guitar. During this tumultuous time, Billie would also receive a Fernandez The Revival RST-50 Stratocaster, a guitar any Green Day fan would know as blue. As Ollie spent her money on blue guitars, she wouldn't know it at the time, or maybe she did. Blue would change the whole wide world, and just in the 80s, no, just in the 90s, the 20s, no, but 42 revolutions of the planet later and beyond, this blue guitar would be in the hearts and minds of the people like a culture war. Blue was purchased through Billie Joe's music teacher, George Cole, who himself had bought the blue axe from David Morgan, the bass player of Santana's band in the 70s, all the way up to 1982. Did Billie steal this man's musical abilities? Billie's birthday gift was one part of the Green Day puzzle, already a few corners starting to appear in the world, Earth. And before that magical blue strat was strapped to Billie's bare chest, an even bigger piece of the puzzle had walked into Billie Joe's life. Bill and Michael were about to get married. Billiam Jelly Lig Week, Billie Joe Armstrong, Billie merged due to a budget cut. Between and on top of the lunch tables, Billie and Michael talked about the woes of being an 11-year-old kid and class clown. And more importantly, if there's anything more important, it's music. The debut Van Halen album was an early inspiration to the guitar-playing Billiam Jilly Bogwog, with AC/DC filling out the set. as that annoying DJ on Spotify is wont to say. Why does he say that so much? I'm going to give you 1 minute. AC/DC's 1979 album Highway to Hell also helped Billie transition from jazz and show tunes to rock and roll. Blizzard of Oz further werewolfed Billie's playing into a style, something more menacing and just a little bit into the Back to the Future of 1983. Pyromania by Def Leppard would share things like a father to a son about a song. How to combine heaviness with accessibility and still soar above the mucky muck. That's Tenacious D reference for some reason. Hit Me Baby One More Time is the greatest song in the world. All right. Iron Maiden would also teach Billie how to shred, and Weezer references do not belong in this Billie Joe Armstrong video. I apologize to you, or to anyone else that I hurt too. With his mother working late nights at the diner and teenage siblings in charge, Billie was left to his own devices and imagination, and it would lead him down an 8th Avenue serenade. This Mike Dirnt guy was bonkers. Full on energy to match Billie Joe's and also mac him a little bit. And suddenly, the two class clowns with tragedies at home became a duo. Mike would sleep over at the Armstrong house, he and Billie Joe recreating songs that they loved on their guitars, their dueling guitars, the aforementioned heavy metal of the late 70s and early 80s. But as they sharpened their guitar strings on Maiden and Ozzy, Billie was discovering a different vein, the blood flow of rock and roll, a different vein in the blood flow of the rock. Billie's two brothers, David and Alan, were listening to the alternative to Def Leppard and Ozzy Osbourne. Bands like The Replacements, Husker Du, and the Ramones joined Van Halen in the guitar heroes that kept the young power duo going as they roughed their fingertips on power chords. Billie and Mike began going to shows both large and small together, the first being Van Halen in 1984. All the while, Billie was still listening to his first album purchase of the Monkees' greatest hits. All this music was shared and flowing through Billie Joe and Michael Ryan Pritchard, but Husker Du's Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely struck a certain chord. The simplistic beauty of the Ramones and the sexiness of Joey cemented the bouncy walls of Billie's mind. Billie could use these sounds, combining it with his go-to guitar song, Johnny Be Good, a classic Chuck Berry tune. At 13, Billie Joe was taken to an REM show by his sister, which places this event at, you guessed it, 1985. There was Springsteen, Madonna, 3 years before Nirvana, because I'm a music nerd. Anyway, there was also REM on their Fables of Reconstruction tour. They played this insane set list. Look at this. An insane 27-song set. And it was the first time Billie saw an indie band breaking free of the chains of that word, while also holding on to that word as people around the world supported them and cheered them on like they were Van freaking Halen or something. And to make the night even more special, his sister Anna went to oogle Peter Buck, leaving Billie alone to absorb the performance in a very, very specific, special kind of way. There was a car crashing deep inside Billie Joe's heart, a storm where REM, The Replacements, Husker Du, Def Leppard, Bat-Biting Ozzy, and the Ramones, it all made perfect sense. Ozzy stood next to Michael Stipe, who looks like John Malkovich, don't pretend he doesn't. Like Katy Perry looks like Zooey Diz Channel. And Billie Joe looks like Fink. Wait, that last one was a joke. I apologize. Billie Joe Armstrong and Michael Ryan Pritchard, not yet the dirt we all know today, jammed away at this new alternative, new punk sound. Without his father on the drum set, Billie's live performances continued on small stages in his hometown. Christmas songs like Silent Night were part of his set, but Billie knew he wanted to do more than cover holiday classics. 1986. Music was still on MTV. Billie and Mike were jamming dual guitars, and on the December 31st, New Year's Day, a venue called Gilman Street would open its doors. Gilman Street quickly became a mecca of both hardcore punk and the burgeoning alternative scene. The alternative fans had their days, and the hardcore kids had theirs. As to not cross the streams. Ghostbuster reference? I don't know, don't ask. Of a 15-year-old looking for a fun night of music and the community with a 25-year-old looking to get bloody in the mosh pit and maybe stomp his enemies' heads in. Did they know the enemy? Rahe. Did you get that reference? Rahe, get it? We have to talk about the music because the music is as much Billie's story as his own life, his own experiences. They are intertwined. Billie and Michael, now known as Mike Dirnt at school, started going to shows at 924 Gilman Street, quickly bonding with their fellow teens there that wasn't possible at high school. On May 28th, 1987, a band called Operation Ivy, fresh out of their garage, played their first show at the real venue at Gilman Street. Their combination of punk, ska, and hardcore lit a flame in the Gilman Street, gaining a local following after just 2 shows. Billie and Mike watched with wonder as Operation Ivy brought the house down, while another 2 punk bands, Crimp Shrine and Mr. T Experiments, began bringing massive crowds to the G Street venue. Illman, baby. Billie and Mike were both guitarists. They needed a bass player and a drummer if their dream of playing Gilman Street was to come true. Billie Joe had found his musical brother at school, and maybe lightning could indeed strike uno, dos, tres, cuatro multiple times at Pinole High School. Maybe not. The earliest lineups. Billie and Mike first recruited fellow students and their best friends, Sean Hughes and Jason Relva, into the band, with Sean Hughes on bass and Jason Relva goofing around on various instruments, but basically serving as a creative consultant in the business world of 15-year-olds. Billie and Mike then found their first drummer in Raj Punjami, an immensely talented and driven young drummer, also born in the year of our Lord, 1972, baby. Condom was the new band. The brand new heavy metal band? That's right. Billie, Mike, Sean, and Raj quickly shifted gears to straight up rock and roll, another clear indicator of Billie Joe Armstrong being a sellout. Condom, or as I like to pronounce it, Condom, was no more, and then Blood Rage, and then Desecrated Youth was now the name of the pure, uncut rock and roll band from Oakland, California. Desecrated Youth was complete. Billie, Mike, Raj, and Sean Hughes on bass guitar, the only official member or of any incarnation of Green Day to not sing backing or lead vocals. Shame on you, Sean. Shameful Sean. A darn good bassist, a bass guitarist who'd never be replaced, right? This guy's definitely coming back to Green Day one day. Sean Hughes on bass, ladies and gentlemen. Desecrated Youth was on a mission, or at least Billie Joe was, to play anywhere and with anyone that they could. They practiced their heavy metal in the garden behind Raj Punjami's house, and now they're popular rock music. As Desecrated Youth honed their sound with Billie bringing more and more songwriting into the mix, they quickly realized the name was a little misleading and took the title of one of Billie Joe's most fleshed out tunes called Sweet Children. Billie and Mike discovered the Devil's Lettuce at this time, which would play into their band name Troubles later on, while Condom and Blood Rage and Desecrated Youth never made it out of the backyards. Sweet Children began playing shows at their high school, engaging with the minority of punk rockers that lived a lonely existence in the late 1980s. Billie further delved into the alternative music of Camper Van Beethoven and the Replacements, learning their songs with his prized blue guitar. He also became unreasonably angry at his MTV as he witnessed the punk band The Primitives and their song Crash lose to a pop song that Billie can't remember the name of, but Billie champions Crash. However, his champion Crash came out in February of 1988, so the song that it lost to, it had to have been Faith by George Michael, or even Rick Roll. It also could have been Whitney Houston or Belinda Carlisle with Heaven as a Place on Earth, or Steve Woodwin, but George Michael is just a theory from that dude on Green Day Community. Another huge influence of Billie Joe's burgeoning, beautiful, bountiful blue guitar voice and vocal cord, Lady Cobra, voice would be that of the Sex Pistols' Holiday in the Sun. On holiday! Sweet Children, If Only You Were Lonely, and Johnny Be Good became staples of Sweet Children shows, the few shows that there were. When redacted, Raj Punjami stopped sitting in on drums for the band, leaving Sweet Children drummerless. And strike two against the band happened when a determined Billie took their demo tape to Johan, who ran Gilman, and he dismissed it as not punk enough. The first utterance of this statement that still echoes through the music scene today in 2024 and 2025. And to break the fourth wall for a second, as if I haven't already, if you're one of the people saying that things aren't punk enough in the 2020s, please just listen to some awful punk band with two fans and make sure not to support them in any way, because that wouldn't be very punk to support a musician. Oh, while the collective band wasn't holding on very well, Mike Dirnt moved into Billie Joe's home, cementing their relationship as the pillar that would outlast all further Sweet Children shakedowns. And oh girl, are there some shakeups coming. First official drummer. Sweet Children couldn't get a gig at Gilman singing about girls not liking them over radio-ready bops. Gilman wanted pure, uncut punk. And enter Isocracy, a band that would dump trash on your head and you'd like it, because punk rock, it's meaningful trash. It's meaningful pee-pee. Billie and his band became friends with Isocracy's drummer, John Kiffmeyer, known at Gilman and across the land as Al Sobrante. Who the is John Kiffmeyer? Never heard of them. Al Sobrante was a blue bandana wearing wild one, and personalities clashed a bit between the Sweet Children's big personalities and his, but it worked. And after convincing Al Sabrante to do a Raj Punjami fill in on drums, all the Green Day Minecraft blocks began to coalesce into a Minecraft thing. Billie, Mike, and Sean had been discussing Mike playing bass, and when Al Sabrante joined, Sean knew that this was the perfect time to politely step down from bassist of Sweet Children. Mike had been working with Billie and Billie's guitar teacher, George Cole, and was now proficient enough to dirt, 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 dirt on the bass guitar. As a three-piece with the drummer from Isocracy, Green Children now had cred at Gilman Street, and after a warm-up gig at Rod's Hickory Pit, Sweet Children opened for Neurosis on the Gilman stage. Billie dropped out of high school, fueled by the power of music, and was supported by this punk scene. His new girlfriend, Erica Polino, and the ever-faithful Mike Dirnt. Sweet Children, Strange Land, The Best Thing in Town, and Why Do You Want Him were quickly becoming huge hits in the Gilman crowd. Jilly Bo Legweek purchased a 1977 Datsun he called Thor, one of his only non-music related purchases in life. Billie was far more driven by the music than Thor could ever carry him. With John or Al cultivating their roots at Gilman Street, the Billie-led band built a massive following in the Gilman scene, began recording music under the guidance of Livermore on Lookout, and played shows with their heroes, Operation Ivy. Op Ivy's final Gilman performance would be one for the Bill Story books, as it was their last and Green Day's first. That show was on May 28, 1989, the day Billie, Mike, and Al Sabrante / John Kiffmeyer decided that Sweet Children sounded kind of dumb. On 39 Smooth, recorded around Christmas 1989, Billie put 100% of himself into the songwriting and 100% of himself into the live performances, which were more and more breaking them free from the chains of California. Sean Hughes was tagging along as a roadie even after stepping down as official bassist. The 90s! Once 39 Smooth, named so because Billie's brother was 39 years old back then, came out, Green Day became a local band known nationally. During this time, Billie Joe would meet and mingle with future Pinhead Gunpowder members. And unlike the days of Condom and Desecrated Youth, Billie was now dating a woman named Eric Polino. Green Day took Op Ivy's place as the kings of Gilman Street, and things were good. Around this time, Billie met Adrian Nesser and Jason White, both of whom would later come into the fortune that Billie would create just a few years down this boulevard. The tour and the relationship with Polino ended, and Billie began dating a woman named Amanda. Have you ever looked at your American Idiot booklet and tried to see her name underneath the scribble? I have, because I'm less punk than you and continue listening to Green Day beyond the Look for Love years, you punk-rocking scoundrel, you. And that's how Amanda was. She let Billie know that even properly recording Look for Love was a bad move. He was a sellout piece of garbage. In all seriousness, Amanda Jones, your holy grace, as she's called on Green Day's classic F-Time, would become a huge part of Green Day lore. She is the muse that is used whenever a Green Day song requires a breakup narrative or about unrequited love. Because Billie Joe and Adrian are married and living more comfortably than 99.9% of humans, this is a good way to get some relationship struggles into the music without putting your awesome wife through unneeded drama. Except American Idiot maybe did a little of that too, but we're still in the 1990s, thank God. Amanda wasn't impressed by Billie Joe's personal choices on stage or off, and was the first woman to dump Billie Joe Armstrong. She joined the Peace Corps, or as I like to pronounce it, the Peace Corps. And yes, that's the correct way to say it. The true story of American Idiot was taking place in Billie's life in 1990 as Amanda broke up with him. Billie was becoming a basket case. His girlfriend told him he made her the idiot America and dumped him. And then Al Sobrante, looking more like a John than ever, announced that he was going away to college. Blink 182 times, please. I don't know why. Al/John thought that Green Day could slow down a little, do occasional shows with him, but Billie and Mike had nothing else. No other income, no other desire but to make Green Day music and make Green Day into their life's work. As luck would have it, a band called the Lookouts were pulling an Al Sobrante, on the verge of calling it quits. And there, drum roll please, I don't have a drummer, sorry. Billie knew the Lookouts had a drummer named Trey Cool. A little known fact is that Billie Joe actually recorded vocals and guitars with the Lookouts on a song called Story, which is on Spotify today in the 20s. Billie was always writing songs and riffs, and it was no surprise that he joined a second band in 1991 called Pinhead Gunpowder with his friends Jason White and Eric Comet Bus. And before we get back to the drummer drama, Billie was racking up a repertoire of playing with anyone as he performed with Rancid as guitarist, and he was even invited to join as a permanent Rancid member. But Billie couldn't do that. He was the leader of Green Day. And imagine Billie in Rancid in 2024. That'd be weird. Now we are in the drummer drama yet again. Billie traded Al Sobrante's manager personality for a literal clown college student, and immediately the vibe of Green Day and Billie himself was different. Triple Dance with Mary Jane vibes. Oh yeah! 3 class clowns were now in Green Day. There were a few awkward shows where both drummers would show up, and Trey allowed the official Al to play. But when this happened to Green Day on a night they were opening for Bad Religion, tensions mounted and Al Sobrante was officially replaced by Frankie the Trey Cool. The blood wasn't Taylor Swift bad though, because Al John stuck around to help them produce Kerplunk and even some song that he played on our bonus tracks on that album. Billie Joe, or Jilly Bo, was taking down the obstacles as quickly as life could throw them at him. Drummer situation solved. Love life, Erica and Amanda hadn't worked out, but Adrian became the love of Billie's life and an even bigger inspiration for Green Day than even the heartbreak of Amanda Jones. Your holy grace. I want to slap you, drop the laundry, and... While Billie Joe and his bandmates were taking over the U.S. circuit and making waves in Europe, Nirvana mania was all the rage of the mainstream media. Billie saw it and knew it was time to make his move. If it didn't work out, Green Day would have nowhere to go. If it did work out, they'd certainly be 86th from Gilman Street permanently. Billie and the boys made the decision, and to Gilman Street said so long from the stars. Billie chose Warner because of their respectable roster. Sinatra, Hendrix, REM, Echo and the Bunnymen, the Ramones, U2. Billie's freaking heroes across the board. Billie got with producer Rob Cavallo, got him stoned, and the ground was broken as a sellout, a piece of crap commercial entity. The Green Day Company was born. If Billie was recognized by Gilman Street people, it was a bad scene. Green Day were now sellout, corporate monsters. The Gilman Street punks didn't see three hardworking men who started with literally nothing and created their own money making punk band. The punk scene is just kind of stupid that way. While Gilman hated Billie, Billie still wanted to attend shows there, and he would disguise himself in a fake beard and getup. The headlines in punk zines were hurtful, pushing Billie to go as far as to say, "I've never flown a punk flag in my life." He would always have an appreciation for the music and the ethos, even if the people in the scene were not too hip for him. While being worth more than $75 million as of 2024, Billie has never been seen driving a Lotus Evija for $2.6 million. Man, if Lotus Evija would sponsor this video, I'd sell out in a heartbeat. $3 million for a car. Whoever's driving one of these is not punk rock, I tell you that right now. Justin Bieber's probably driving Usher around in a Lotus Evija, I tell you that right now. Let me tell you something. I've been around since 1985, like the Bowling for Soup song. Anyway, Billie signed to a major label, and it affected his other band, Pinhead Gunpowder, with member Sarah Kirsch stepping down due to this move. Billie focused on evolving past Kerplunk and put all efforts into writing an anti-statement kind of music. And sticking to their roots, Dookie features a vocal performance by the guy who introduced them to Gilman Street. Eggplant, the man, the myth, the eggplant emoji, is the person who says, "What you will," in the background of Longview, even though I can only hear him say, "Will," like the character from American Idiot. Back to Billie Joe solo, though. Everything was spinning out of control again, from the 7-Eleven to the fear of breaking down. And yet, Adrian Nesser was there, like an anchor off the shore of life, keeping Billie Joe grounded and still allowing him to soar as Green Day's popularity became more than any sane person could take on. Billie and Adrian married on July 2nd, 1994, and their first son, Joey Armstrong, was born the following year, inspiring the title of Green Day's next album and the song Brain Stew, dun-dun, dun-dun, is an amalgamation. Wait, what? The song Brain Stew is an amalgamation of newborn parenthood and redacted extracurricular activities. I'm sorry, I'm drinking a lot of Green Day coffee here. I'm losing my mind, man. I'm feeling woozy. Billie was struggling with the arena-sized shows and would use redacted or have a beer before going on stage to deal with the extreme anxiety of playing shows that were not so fun at this point in the band's career. Billie wanted the fame, but as Insomnia era kicked off, Billie wanted to be home with that screaming baby, Joey. He would say as much from the arena stage, a place that he was not enjoying being. Canceling the European leg of the Insomniac tour, Billie and his bandmates, who had never taken time off from their music altogether, wrote an astounding 36 songs for their third album. Imagine getting a trilogy back in 1997 or 98. That would be insane. And Billie was having ideas about a rock opera already. Some big projects later in Green Day's catalog were seeded in the late 1990s. But for now, Billie Joe, along with his wife and infant son, were trying to figure out what to do with all the cash that was pouring in on their heads. Do they take it and crawl? Billie thought Insomniac would be considered a sophomore slump, and it was, but it did well. You can't compare many albums to Dookie and make their sales look good, and Insomniac did well in its own right. But with 4 albums of mostly fast-paced, simple rock songs, Jilly Bo Legweek knew that risks had to be taken in this career of his. The punk scene wasn't supporting him, but only showing its own ignorance. Green Day were beyond all of that punk bullcrap, and it was time to show the world just how unpunk Green Day could be, just how unpunk they were. Billy was now figuring out the balance between arrogant rock star life and good husband, outstanding dad life, and an idea struck him in the midst of writing songs. He wanted a London Calling kind of record. He also wanted his son Joey Armstrong to have the best upbringing possible, a really good father to a son. Billy continued singing and playing guitar with everyone on the planet except you and I, and even mixed a record by the Riverdales in 1995. In addition to working with the Riverdales, Billie Joe dropped a bombshell in the same year, declaring his bisexuality, which in 1995 was incendiary. But his butt baby, Nimrod, was about to be born, and in 1997, Green Day would no longer be a punk band. They were now a rock and roll band with bigger aspirations than fast songs about heartbreak. They rallied against some of the skewed hatred from the punk scene, and at Tower Records in Manhattan, Billie Joe flipped over a CD rack and graffitied "Woo!" and Nimrod on the store windows. He showed his butt, otherwise known as "Me," in the crowd. The Green Day sellouts still had it, the punk rock attitude, even though they weren't punk anymore. In 1997, sellout Billie Joe first acting gig with him recording the voice of Face on King of the Hill, and yet Green Day and Pinhead Gunpowder and a wife and 2 kids and a mansion on the hill was not enough for Jilly Bo Legweek, the man we are talking about today. Later in 1997, Billie Joe founded a punk rock label called Adeline Records. Billie Joe and Adrian Armstrong had their second child, Jacob Danger Armstrong, in late 1998, and yet Billie Joe would continue taking on more and more projects, more responsibilities in Green Day, at home, on other bands' projects, producing in the face of all this superstardom. It was beginning to be a bit much. Goodbye Elston Avenue by Pinhead Gunpowder was perhaps the second biggest project on his plate, as he sings lead on 7 tracks and guitar all over the damn album. Damn it all to hell! It was Earth! Get your stinking paws off me, you damn new metal fans! Just kidding, Dre. You know I love you. I got musical references for days, man. Billie Joe we're not in the present day yet. Billie Joe had been tirelessly working on this music gig since 1986. And now it was the dawning of a new era calling. This will come into dramatic play later on in this video, because Billie Joe would indeed be faced with burning out and growing bored in a smoked out, boring band. In 1998, Billie Joe toured with the Green Day band on the Nimrod tour and promoting the new singles Redundant, and eventually in 1999, Nice Guys finished last. Pinhead Gunpowder would also utilize Billie Joe's vox and guitar abilities, as well as his songwriting on the track 27, although it is credited to Wilhelm Fink. People who get into that whole network our Green Day business, pay attention here, because Billie Joe goes by Wilhelm Fink, and the Fink from the network has a first name that cannot be uttered on Facebook or anywhere on the internet because it's offensive. I cannot speak it out loud. One, because if you say it 3 times, he appears like Beetlejuice. And 2, apparently it's a racist term in some parts of the world, so I just don't want to say it out loud. But there's 2 different Finks at play here. As with then competing bands like Smashing Pumpkins, a band that Billy has changed his negative opinion on later, the late 90s and early 2000s showed a changing landscape. The scene Green Day had essentially created was losing popularity, and metal was taking back what was taken from metal, except this time it was new metal instead of metal. Are you following? Let's go crazy! Billie Joe Armstrong had been crowned king of punk rock, but it was only for a day, it seemed, and now crabby Uncle Aaron Lewis had arrived to tear it all down in one big moat fest, with masked miscreants and Slipknot not far behind. Billie Joe contemplated on the changing musical world and thought hard. Would Green Day become a new metal band? No. He wasn't concerned. With Nimrod, he had shown the world that Green Day were not in fact punk, but a band that could be or do anything. And in the late 90s, Billy had been digging deep in the record crates and pulling out classic Bob Dylan records like Bring It All Back Home, a polarizing album for Dylan fans back in the day. Split between electric and acoustic songs, Bob Dylan abandoned his protest words for more complex social and personal issues and devices. Billy would do the same with Green Day's sound, except in Green Day's case, they would lean into politics, whereas Bob Dylan leaned out of politics for the most part. And this was the first time Green Day would really touch on those social commentary style lyrics. Billie Joe would play different instruments on Warning, the mandolin of Discipline and the harmonica of Discipline. Billy of Discipline would also bulk out his guitar arsenal with the purchase of Floyd, the guitar, a 1956 Les Paul Jr. of Discipline. Billy tried co-producing with Scott Litt of REM and Nirvana notoriety, but their audio visions were not aligned, and Billy said Scott Litt was really cool, but it just didn't work out. For Warning, it was not the right chemistry. The politics weren't heavy-handed, but Billy had his eyes glimmering in the sun of a nuclear society and its ills, nonetheless. Billy saw that the times they were a-changin' from Clinton to Bush. And instead of writing knee-jerk reactions, Billy wanted to stew on things he saw on the TV screen and work on music that was timeless, just like Dookie, like they were trying to be on Dookie. Timeless. Oh, excuse me. Don't excuse me, that ain't punk rock. During the Warning days, Billy and the gang, now with Jason White in tow, finally played the Warped Tour. The guys were getting bored in Green Day, and Warped Tour helped them snap out of it at least a little bit. Another snapping out of the funk came on September 11th, 2001. Darkness falls in September for Billie Joe Armstrong yet again. Billie, Mike, and Trey, and I'm getting emotional, had been a solid unit for over a decade, but the cracks were beginning to show. As the band drifted apart with no idea how to follow up a Bob Dylan-inspired record in 2000, Billy isolated himself. CNN, touring burnout, and an unbalanced band dynamic had led Billie Joe back to Basketcase mode. Back to Basketcase mode. Hitting the big 3-0 in 2002, Billie had to escape California and he traveled to New York City for a little while. Making a church on Sunday, Deals with Adrian, Billie took a black leather jacket and a guitar to the East Village rock scene that was heavily intertwined with the bar and nightlife scene. My angel of death is my nightlife. He spent his time in New York walking alone, thinking about politics, life, his music, and more. No judgment from band members, no one listening at all. And just to retrace my words a little bit, making a church on Sunday deal with Adrian. That's what I meant a while ago. He made a deal with his wife. He had to get out of town. He had to leave. Once Billie's creative juices started oozing and flowing, he rang up Jesse Malin and asked if he could set up a studio for him to write and record new ideas. During this life detour, Billie Joe would scramble up rock and roll ideas with Ryan Adams for his album Rock and Roll. I'm dead. And Jesse Malin's album The Heat was also recorded during this time in New York City. Ryan Adams partied 0.18%, a little harder than Billie Joe and Jilly Bo, decided to get out of New York City while he still could, with some new inspiration and maybe an ounce of sobriety as he escaped Ryan Adams' insane partying ways. Billie Joe took some of that party with him, however, and got a DUI on January 5th, 2003, while driving a BMW. Excellent what? Green Day's collective vibrance was dimming at this time, but collections of their greatest hits and B-sides were making new fans all the while. Billie, Mike, and Trey were falling apart. Billie was getting subtle verbal charges from Mike and Trey about his songwriting ability. There were talks of the band ending and Billie Joe going solo. Ultimately, they had sort of a Metallica, some kind of monster band rehab and worked things out together, coming out on the other side a much healthier, more mature, and honest band. They hadn't been able to grow up in their rock star lifestyles, and a lot of that growing up happened in those intense meetings. They began recording together in the summer of 2003 in an uncomfortable recording session for Cigarettes and Valentines, which bridged the gap between Kerplunk and Insomnia, or so the legend goes. Billie's time in New York had spawned several ideas in his mind, so when Cigarettes and Valentines was stolen, scrapped, or masked men, whatever the heck happened to it, Billie kept writing songs. The blend of previous Green Day eras, it wasn't great, but there was that Dirty Christmas Polka album that the band banged out as well. Some kind of new wavy kind of songs that were flying amidst their airwaves, starting a revolution. You and me just rebel and bask. Okay, this isn't about Eminem. Let's not do that. And for my next rap, no, I'm not going to rap the rest of Billie Joe's life story. Nearly 4 albums of material was pouring out of Billie Joe, and even Mike and Trey were bringing in a lot of melodies, a lot of lyrics, and nearly completed songs from Mike Dirnt. It's around this time that Billie Joe encountered the network and would quickly sign them to his record label, Adeline Records. Some speculate that Green Day and the network conspire together to proliferate rumors about their connections and cross the wires of Cigarettes and Valentines and Money Money 2020. But after reaching out to the SNU 27 times exactly, I have yet to hear back from the SNU. Another lesson learned and failed. I couldn't get a hold of anybody from the network. Billie Joe actually attended some of the earliest network shows and could be spotted in the crowd talking to journalists like myself. He said, "There's a lot of rumors about Green Day being the network, and it's preposterous. I'm right here, and those guys are up on the stage, and it's pretty good." Billy was likely secret friends with the network who shared his interest in lusciatology from the Church of Lusciatology. And more things about the network. And if you think I was joking about being there as a journalist at that network show, Bill Schneider from the Green Day camp says, and I quote, "Green Day are not the network." He should have said Green Day is not the network, but hey, Or feels better when talking about bands, even though wait. R feels better when talking about bands, even though is right and R are wrong. R, you won't be laughing when I'm making you cry, cause Mike Dirnt was in the studio creating what would become Homecoming. Angry that Billy and Trey weren't there, but it turns out they both kind of had legitimate reasons for being late. They both had court on that day. Billy was dealing with his DUI conviction, and Trey Cool divorcing another ex-wife. These things would become part of the American Idiot lore, as well as true life stories from the band's biographies, kind of like this one you're listening to and watching to right now. Green Day lit! They lit not 27 or 80 cylinders, but they lit every freaking single cylinder. What was I saying? They lit all cylinders of the band, and when the last bit of work on What's Her Name was completed, Billie Joe was in tears. The song was so good. The song was so sad. But also, the moment of Green Day finding their footing had become a moment of them doing their best work. They were once again faced with disbandment. There would be no topping this. What direction could possibly come next? Billie Joe had no idea. He had went for bold lyrics, rock your socks off music, and political imagery that catapulted them to the top of the pops for the second time in a decade. Billy's alcohol intake was escalating. The shows were bigger, and there were so many of them. He wanted to lay down his arms and give up the fight. But Green Day doesn't take breaks. Not yet. From 1986 to 2004, they had rocked harder than anyone, and it continued. What had started as a single beer to ease his basket-casedness before shows had transformed into something a little more ominous. Transformations into a human trash can were becoming more and more frequent, even after the maturity meetings of the band. In 2005, Billie Joe played 149 shows with Green Day, the most they had ever done in a single year. His alcoholism, which had been a minor issue since the Nimrod era, was latching a hold of a man so busy he barely had time to apply his Billy eyeliner or pull his pants up on airplanes. In 2006, Billy's busybody ways shifted from the touring machine to the writing robot, and Billy's bleeping it senseless. It comes with batteries, but speaks some other language by saving things and saying things like Viva la Gloria. 2006 also produced one of Billy's strangest acting gigs, a voiceover gig actually, with Billy playing Charlie Hanson, a demented cult leader in the magical film Live Freaky, Die Freaky. You might play Green Day songs like American Eulogy or American Idiot in front of your kids, but do not, I repeat, do not let anyone under the age of 100 watch Live Freaky, Die Freaky without extreme parental guidance. It's freaky, and it's if you like the Human Centipede Part 2 full sequence, this just might be something else you would like. It's hilarious, it's disgusting, and vile, and sick, and twisted beyond belief. Billie's tears over what's-her-name were because of this daunting task. Green Day were not breaking up. Billie Joe wasn't going solo. Green Day were going to try and top American Idiot. Billie has been quoted in saying anything great is a series of mistakes. American Idiot required at least 4 albums to be written to get to that quality. For what would become 21st Century Breakdown, Billie Joe started with silence, then began making noise, writing songs, inspired by Bruce Springsteen, The Who, David Bowie, The Beat, The Plimsolls, The Kinks, The Pretty Things, The Doors, The Meatloafs, Eddie Cochran's, The Creation. Billie Joe wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. The songs were good, some great, but there was the shadow of American Idiot, like a pen in hand, lingering over everything Green Day did. Lay down your arms, Billie. Give up the fight. Times were tough, but being home from touring gave Billie, Mike, and Trey a leg up. And as some of the songs poured from their souls, there was a distinctive 60s and 70s set of songs taking shape within the sessions. After several dozen bottles of wine and booze, Green Day were inspired to record on 8-track what would become a retro 60s, 70s vibe of a record. The band claimed it was because they were spontaneous and loving making music again, both of which were true. But Billie was horrified out of his mind that Green Day had no direction with which to follow American Idiot. They decided not to follow it up in the traditional sense, but to release this other album, this 60s and 70s rock, as the Foxborough Hot Tubs. Like the guys in the network, the Tubbies, who claim to be Green Day, but I think that's a joke, the Tubbies are also members of the Church of Lushitology. They see Billie on Saturdays, which is like the Lushitology Sundays. And while hanging out with these wine and booze-addled junkies, Billie's drinking, yet again, being pushed into the upper echelon of insanity and basket-casedness. The drunken blur of Stop, Drop, and Roll was, if not just what the doctor ordered, a welcome reprieve from Dr. Feelgood. Billie Joe had written 4 albums for American Idiot to be birthed out of the Statue of Liberty. He then wrote 45 songs for Breakdown and at least 13 for Stop, Drop, and Roll. The drunken studio sessions continued, with Billie, Mike, and Trey joining drunken forces with Jesse Malin to create a side project called the Rodeo Queens for a one-off magical song called Depression Times, Living in the Great Divide. Rodeo Queens may sound like a royal queen from Rodeo, but it's more likely named after the 2 places. I am genius. Billie refused to stop. The Billie, Mike, Trey Green Day had been working 24 hours a day from 1990 to 2010, but Billie had been going longer and harder than that since the age of 5 in 1977. Writing songs, playing shows, anxiety attacks, self-medicating, 99 bottles of beer on the wall was becoming a reality for Billie, now on the cusp of the big 4-0. Cradle songs for a midlife is what we're calling this next section. And Billie had put in 35 years of nonstop effort and was now in this cycle of churning out 4 or 5 projects at a time and touring the world with Green Day, which had become a lucrative, unstoppable force in the music industry. Billie wasn't sure he could stop the Green Day touring massacre that started the year after American Idiot was released, even if he wanted to. And he did not. No one did. Never stop. Bands that stop, bands that take a break, they come back and they aren't as good. That's what Billie Joe thought. Writing 4 albums for American Idiot, writing 58 plus songs for 21st Century Breakdown to come out and be forever labeled as not as good as the last one? We hadn't heard anything yet. Billie began starring in the Broadway show of American Idiot, for which he wrote several original tunes. Billie and his family, wife Adrienne Armstrong and sons Jacob and Joey, recorded a Christmas album as a Christmas card to send to their family, friends, and probably some of their enemies too, with a nice little letter in there like the ones he sent to fans' parents back in the day, or like Homer Simpson, "Why, you little..." Writing, recording, and oddly enough, letting his pants hang low. In 2011, Billie was boarding a flight headed from Oakland to Burbank when a crew member demanded that he pull up his pants up. Billie asked if they had anything better to do than to be pants police. "The pants police, they're coming down the aisle." But they, in fact, did not have anything better to do because they're the pants police. And you know what? The pants police, they ejected Jilly Bo from the flight. And Billie made an angry tweet, which netted him an apology and the next flight. But beware, if your pants hang low and they wobble to the floor, then you may not be able to fly to Burbank. Okay? Like the massive writing sessions that happened with American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown, a stressed and debauched Billie Joe put pen to paper and the songs started coming. There were a string of extremely promising songs that Rob Cavallo really praised from Billie's pen, but the pen was shaky and was becoming a blur. Adding to his 99 bottles of beer on the wall was sleeping pills, among other things. Billie was so wired he couldn't sleep. His mind raced with trying to write something that would be more well received than not as good as American Idiot. Damn you! Damn you! What the hell? He wrote so many songs in such a short period of time that a double album was on the table pretty early in the process. But some of the songs didn't fit together, and boom, there was over 50 songs Billie Joe had written. Billie had some meltdowns during the Breakdown tour, but now with multiple substances swirly gigging in his organs, the meltdowns were more dire as they played show after show after show after show. In New York, Billie had 5 Guinnesses before the show, 5 Guinnesses during the show, and then a human-sized beer can of Guinness after the show. It transformed him into the aforementioned human garbage can that lived in a park near the park benches and harassed hobos. Still living in the whirlwind of being in the band that had changed pop music not once but twice, Billie and Green Day felt like they had the license to thrill, could do no wrong no matter what anybody said. And perhaps those around him felt the pressure to be a yes man or yes men. Billie Joe Armstrong was now drinking in excess of 12 million liters of booze a second just to stave away his anxiety and get the feeling right. That was a tasteless Blink 182 joke. I apologize for nothing. Punk rock! I too have had a bit to drink tonight as I narrate this poopy poop. The Green Day band from Oakland, California stopped for nothing. Nobody, never, not Justin Bieber, not Usher, nobody. 1 minute. The trilogy tour kicked off with Billie, Mike, and Trey grizzled from the 1,477 shows previously. It's a miracle they survived to their 1,494th show, the 17th of 2012, and their last of that year. It was all about to crumble. Despite ingesting more alcohol than the history of humanity ever, I've had a bit to drink. Despite ingesting more alcohol than the history of humanity ever the night before going on stage, Billie rarely stumbled or slurred. Or at least not to the point that it interfered with the Green Day shows. On the night of September 21st, 2012, Billie was in Las Vegas, and what happened certainly did not stay there. Billie had ingested twice the size of the observable universe in alcohol, and despite kind of standing and kind of pulling his pants up, had already blacked out by the time he stood on the stage. There was a miscommunication between iHeart and Green Day. Billie, 4 trillion Rhea numbers to the wind, thought that Green Day had 1.5 or 2 hour slot to perform, but this was not the Basketcase. They had 36 minutes, which would have allotted them time to play 1-minute clips of the entire trilogy, but ayo! There's got to be room for the hey-ohs! I hear those are gone now. In a now sad but legendary rant, Billie Joe cursed out iHeartRadio, the audience in attendance, and made comments about Usher, Justin Bieber, who Drunken Bunny Billie believed had usurped his time on stage, with which he could have belted out at least 15 more hey-ohs and maybe even touched his pants a bit. Billie smashed his yellow guitar and exited the stage, with Mike and Trey smashing their instruments in solidarity, but they were pissed. At iHeart, a little, yes. Someone had told Green Day the wrong thing, but Billie had been coming apart at the seams. The triple threat of an album they were about to unleash might not have been the best follow-up to the album that isn't as good as American Idiot. You idiots that say that! Sheesh! But more than anything, Mike and Trey, and Jason White at this point too, were worried about Billie Joe, the mortal man. Not Billie Joe Armstrong, the Basketcase guy. Their friend, their brother, their companion, their lifelong dear brother. A discreet, harsh, and loving meeting was held after the iHeart disaster, and it was deadly serious. Get help or the band is over. And Billie Joe knew that Mike was not bluffing. It was life or death. Green Day or no Green Day moment, and Billie made the decision. For the first time in 35 years of pounding the pavement, Billie Joe Armstrong took some time off. Would Green Day come back watered down, not as good as Billie said in the behind-the-scene footage of Quattro? The band issued an apology and that their set had not, in fact, been shortened. The trilogy, or the first act of the trilogy, Uno, was just days from release. Billie had tried complete sobriety prior to this ordeal, but it hadn't lasted, and he needed help. Billie checked into a rehab facility after the iHeartRadio show for the first time. Billie would spend 2012 working on himself and talking up then would-be President Barack Obama. Before this, Billie had been piling on project after project, trying his hand at acting in 1994, This Is 40, Nurse Jackie, and The Voice. For a real treat, I suggest you seek out his deleted scene from This Is 40. It's the funniest piece of comedy ever made. One of Billy's lifelong dreams so far unfulfilled is to star in Days of Our Lives, but the night's just started. I pray the killer doesn't take the life of the party. I can't stop partying. That's a Green Day song or a Weezer song. I don't know. Billy's self-examination and treatment would stretch into the first months of 2013 as well, and Billy was back to the races, working on Foreverly with Norah Jones, a cover album of a cover album called Songs Our Daddies Taught Us from the Everly Brothers, and another Billie Joe vocal performance that gets overlooked. Billy became the mayor of New York on the Lonely Island's I Run New York, probably the best song Billie Joe has ever sung. I run New York, it's a bleeping headache, it really wears you down. Billy would continue pursuing his acting career with Courtro and Broadway Idiot, even if they were roles as himself, frontman of God's favorite band. Billy and Joseph, his son, shipped off to New York for Billy to work on his first starring role. 2014. Billy would assist his wife Adrienne Armstrong in starting Project Chimp, a chimpanzee rescue that gets chimps out of scientific studies and allows them to touch grass, like some of you humans need to do. You can take a very affordable tour of the place or volunteer, and to get personal for a moment, I'm definitely going to tour and volunteer at this place one day soon. That'll be a video. Billy also played with the Replacements in 2014 as Paul Westerberger laid on a couch at the shows and let Billy play guitar and sing. Unlike soap opera, this was a dream of Billie Joe's come true. Billy would also do an unlikely collaboration with Avicii in the year of our Lord 2014, a song called Just No Pleasing a Woman, a very different kind of song than Billie Joe is used to doing. Green Day had released American Idiot, followed it up twice with spectacular albums, but with diminishing returns. And this time around, they had taken a break. Something Billy thought in his heart and his mind was a bad thing for a rock band. Sure, he had saved his life, saved himself, but how badly was the Green Day machine damaged? They hadn't returned to their old glory of American Idiot, and maybe that was for the best. It was dangerous at the top. They're telling you still. You have to smile while you kill. Writing and recording a mountain of Green Day songs in sober retrospect was a bold move, but perhaps it could have been more focused, more streamlined, in a process that started with American Idiot and continued with each Green Day era going forward. Billy began writing not for Green Day, but for a musical called These Paper Bullets. And like 2011 and 2012, in 2015, the songs kept a-coming. But Billy would utilize these songs in places where they were needed most instead of bloating what would be Green Day's 12th studio album, an as yet unnamed Mystery Girl. 2015 was a big year for branching out in another field, more specifically the coffee fields of the planet Earth with Oakland Coffee, a wild and bold coffee venture where Billy would yet again partner with his best friend, Michael Pritchard. Billy would record bass guitar, a very rare thing in Billy's catalog of recorded works, with the band The Shrives on their Turn Me On EP, which is great. But perhaps the most punk rock thing in 2015 was Billie and Mike and Trey's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The very same year that they became eligible. And as work wrapped up on the next Green Day album, the 12th Green Day album called Revolution Radio, Billy was able to let go of his anxiety. Not all of it, but most of it. his anxiety about trying to outdo American Idiot with bigger, louder, stronger albums. Revolution Radio would be sort of a make under, as Billie called it, peeling back the layers a bit, but also shaking things up with bow guitars. And despite a more straightforward sound on most tracks, Billie managed to get some more experimental sounds on the record as well. 2017 would see Green Day celebrating their career with a second greatest hits, but also seeing the door close on Adeline Records for Billie Joe as well. Billie would begin drinking again as God's Favorite Band made its rounds with his most successful tunes, and during this time of experimentation with his sobriety, Billie was able to drink in moderation, although this would prove to be a bad idea as the years passed. For now, Billie was celebrating nearly 30 years of Green Day, being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and loving life. Oh, and ever the musician, Billie Joe joined fellow Armstrong Tim of Rancid, who's no relation, by the way, in forming the Armstrongs, with the excellent tune, If There Ever Was a Time. Revolution Radio did well for Green Day, but as usual, Billie had a stockpile of too many songs and not enough albums to release them on. And in 2018, his song stockpile was getting a bit ridiculous, even for the Green Day vault. But putting out an album under his own name, at least in 2018, somehow didn't feel quite right for Billie. There was a lot of unused, really cool band names, and Billie Joe had a song with just the right feel, The Long Shot. Yes, that was farting in the background as I talked about The Long Shot. It was a long shot, and without his star-studded name attached, the album wouldn't sell 1 trillion copies, but it wouldn't have to. It didn't have to. There was no pressure, no quota, no checklist of all the things the Green Day machine had to pump out and produce on every track. Love is for Losers by The Long Shot is very much a Billie Joe solo album with all songs written and produced by Billie Joe Armstrong. Billie did the vocals, guitar, bass, drums, and composed every last note on Love is for Losers, except the Ozzy cover, the album's closer. The Long Shot, or Billie Joe, Don't You Know, turned out 3 EPs, 2 singles, a music video, and on the record, the only other performer would be the one and only Joey Armstrong, son to a father. While The Long Shot was gobbled up by Green Day fans, some took it to mean that Green Day were disbanding. Billie saw one too many comments alluding to this on Instagram and quickly made a response video where he plainly stated that he is a musician. He likes making music with Mike and Trey and other musicians. So no, Green Day are not breaking up. You're probably listening to Justin Bieber and Usher. Wow, breaking up. 1 minute. Billie was honored in 2018 by receiving honorary citizenship of Italy by the mayor. We got some cool footage of that. Roll that beautiful Italy footage. Billie would collaborate with Jason Malin on Strangers and Thieves in 2019, as well as Morrissey on Wedding Bell Blues, a song that utters Billie Joe's name a bit too much, and this is an even odder choice than the Avicii collaboration, showing that Billie Joe's more open-minded than the closed-minded punk scene. Listen to what you like, you freaking mohawked, uniform-wearing punks. And continue his multi-album writing madness, as I'm absolutely certain that Billie Joe is good friends with the fellows in the network, and that he has also collaborated with those guys to craft their sophomore No Slump, No KKK, No Fascist USA. I mean, Money Money 2020 Part 2, we told you so. An album that takes trilogy lyrics and mangles them in disgusting, sleazy rock bonkers, fun, disgusting sleaze rock. much like the first Money Money had lies and lyrics tying to American Idiot. Redacted and redacted. But if you want to, redacted, then we told you so. In 2020, it was a time for change, and Billie Joe and family sold their Oakland home for $7.25 million. Could have been buying some of them expensive those cars. Billie Joe got $7.25 million for his house, but that was during the apocalypse. Imagine what they could have got for it before the end of the world. The end of the world, lost in a tango, it's freaking me out. Burning holes and blackouts. Earlier in 2020, Billie Joe and Green Day were again at the Nexus. They were again at the nexus of next album blues. They had made peak music with American Idiot, went bigger and longer on Breakdown, way bigger and more experimental on the trilogy, and with Revolution Radio had reined in their sound for a more mature sounding Green Day. Where could they go next? Billy had used his Devil May Care power pop vibes up on the Long Shot record, and Green Day fans might not be so accepting of that sound if it was coming from the corporate entity known as punk band 8675309, Green Day the Machine. And even if fans wanted it, Green Day knew that sometimes fans didn't know what was best. It was time for Green Day to get weird, get funky, and even pull in some of that Foxborough Hot Tubs 1970s freaky vibes into the main dish, a Green Day record. And plus, they were coming up at the end of their record deal. They could get a little wild, a little crazy, a little bit sexier, a little bit drunker, a little bit more wild. What had Billy been listening to create such a father of all ... albums? Prince, Mott the Hoople, T-Rex, Martha and the Vandals, and even more modern stuff like Queens of the Stone Age, The Hives, and Franz Ferdinand across the street. Also, the heavier MC5 was a big influence on the father of all as well. And just as Father of All was born, the world stopped turning, and Green Day were sidelined yet again. There was no touring, no major production capability in this new dark age. Bad Religion is a good band, by the way. I don't know why I brought them up. So, Billy began making music in solitude and began working on cover songs of his favorite 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s tunes. No Fun Mondays was released on November 20th, 2020, and would be the first album ever under Billie Joe's own name, even if it contained no songs written by Billie Joe Armstrong. Like the Long Shot, Billy played virtually every note on No Fun Monday. After a worldwide shakeup like we endured in 2020, Green Day came out the other side with standalone singles in Dreaming, Here Comes the Shock, Pollyanna, which were kind of a continuation of No Fun Mondays, an honest attempt at making fun and the whole wide world feel better, at large. In late 2021, Billie Joe and Green Day began teasing new music, and hardcore fans on the internet were discovering leaks of Beach Boy covers, among other things, and computer viruses on some less than savory websites. Get it? Savory websites? Billie, Mike, and Trey, man, I'm getting really sick of saying that. I wish they'd break up. Were reunited in writing and recording the follow-up to Father of All. It was imminent. The songs, as always, were pouring out of Billie Joe's brain faster than they could record them all. And all three Green Day members and the Forum Green Day community exploded with excitement over Billy and the Gang's return, covering them all. The video teasers of new songs sounded kind of like the trilogy songs, but more focused and with more style and aplomb. That's an Offspring reference, lyrically, that is. 2021 was coming to an end, but it seemed like a 2022 Green Day album called 1972 was imminent. It would drop any day, like a heart, like a hand grenade. And it was so close to exploding, to being like a surprise release in 2022. Wow! Do as I say, not as I do, because I'm a walking contradiction. Billie's 1962 Chevy Nova was stolen around this time, but was found abandoned in the streets of California. This mystery was never solved, and if you or anyone you know knows what happened here, leave a comment after reporting it to the proper authorities. Or, I want to be the authority! But Green Day had been sidelined before, and Billie knew he needed to get sober, else risk another iHeartRadio 2012. The teasing stopped. Green Day's 1972, however rockin' and awesome it sounded to the band at the time, may have been coming from a dark place, a soggy, drunken, miserable place that Billie needed to crawl, kicking and screaming out of immediately. The recording stopped, and Billie wisely sat around in rehab, feeling like a lab rat. There was no announcement. There was no public reports or TMZ making Billie feel more miserable than he already was. Billie's problems were kept secret from the public, and that streamlined his rehabilitation into 20s. Billie rejoined the gang, refreshed and with a fever tonight. The songs he had written for 1972, they weren't bad. They weren't as bad as they feared, but they did need some more work. The 1972 sessions were learning or leaning towards either a straight punk record or a massive American Idiot style album, and the band and Rob Cavallo all agreed that a triple or double album territory had been visited once already, and it didn't make too many Green Day fans happy. So he decided and they decided together that a triple or double was not the way to go. 1972 was left behind, although a handful of its tracks would survive the culling and make it onto Saviors, the 2024 album by Green Day. But before the Saviors would be unleashed, Billie did something not so Green Day related. He purchased part ownership of the Oakland Roots, a pro soccer team in his hometown. Down in Oakland. That's a Transplants reference. You might not be gangster or thug enough to get it. Look, I ain't got no brains would be Billie Joe's favorite punk song he's ever written. A huge praise from the writer of hundreds, nay thousands of songs, including Rito. We really need to look into Billie Joe's song vault, the Green Day vault. It is glowing with radiation, people, and stupid amounts of songs. I'm thinking it might be more than thousands. What do you guys think? During the promotion of Saviors, Billie riled up some folks with singing "I'm Not a Part of a MAGA Agenda," although I think that this is a case of the internet making a bigger deal than it was. Sure, there are some folks that weren't around for the American Idiot era. 20 years has gone so fast. But I'd say most people on either side of the political fence, they know how Green Day feel about this topic. In any case, the anti-social media ran with it, and you know what they say, no press is bad press. It got people talking about Saviors. And it seems like we're getting away from the personal Billie Joe and getting into the Green Day world. So let's turn our hymnals to Billie's writing on Saviors. There's some deeply personal Billie tracks on this album. Bobby Socks is a love song about Billie and Adrian's passionate kissing in graveyards and probably more than kissing. Getting married and all that ballyhoo on top of the tombstones, you know? Dilemma was the gateway into Billie's most recent struggle with alcohol, and Billie spoke candidly about these new challenges, how he would become a human garbage can while drinking, leading to other more dangerous ingestions, damaging relationships, damaging songs, and damaging the Green Day machine. It had to stop. And also, the song Dilemma can work on a few different levels. Like the drunk people can enjoy it, the sober people can enjoy it, and it's just a masterful example of his songwriting. Goodnight Adeline tackling the same subject with a bit more saccharine vibe, while Susie Chapstick is a classic Green Day song about damaged love lost and analyzing whether forgiveness is actually achieved or lost, or merely a blurry Instagram post from a long, long time ago, chasing a ghost on the digital airwaves, the information highway, if you will. This is not the Twilight Zone. Billie Joe Armstrong talks about his songcrafting skills on Corvette Summer and also hints about his movie watching habits in the title of what are we saying? In Corvette Summer. That's a movie. And Father to a Son is a heartfelt sequel to Wake Me Up When September Ends. The rain may still fall, but Billie is doing his best as a father of all, or a father of two, and a husband to the beautiful Adrienne Armstrong, who he likes to kiss in graveyards and watch old movies and reruns. As of making this video, Billie has just hit the road with his band Green Day for the Saviors Tour, where, oddly enough, they're celebrating 20 years of American Idiot and the 30th anniversary of Dookie. There's only been one or two shows as of filming this video, and it was an amazing, if a little confusing, set list for the Saviors Tour. American Idiot and Dookie in full. We know that was going to happen. It was advertised. The baffling part is that there was enough time to perform 6 additional songs, and they chose to play the big hits from Breakdown, Insomniac, Nimrod, and Warning instead of playing anything from Saviors, really. It's an amazing show still, with 34 songs and 16 of them being big hits, and Billie Joe and his brothers Mike Dirnt and Trey Cool back together and firing on all cylinders. If you can make it to one of these Saviors shows, it's definitely a spectacle as Billie looks forward to his 53rd birthday, Green Day's 15th studio album, and whatever shenanigans part 2 the future old boy holds on for us. Did you get all those Green Day references in there? It was Shenanigans, The Future Old Boy, and Hold On. I think I've made myself clear. It's something unpredictable if you don't look at this video's progress bar at the bottom of the video. But in the end, it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Special thanks to Mark Spitz, VH1, Aaron, Rumpelstiltskin 2000, not the other Rumpelstiltskin, Pace Junkie Punk, The 99th Revolution, Hermione, Little Boy Named Booze, Lenny, and all the wonderful people over on the Green Day community. An online hangout so awesome, even the spam is delicious. Like the Nice Guys Finish Last video says, there is no I in Green Day. No eyeballs in a blind monkey. I don't know! That was an Ozzy Osbourne reference.